All right, what's going on, everybody? Hope you guys all had a wonderful 4th of July. I'm really excited about this, and I don't even think I could wait this last minute. It's almost felt like game day today. I got the pregame jitters, had to go through the entire pregame warm up for myself. So, welcome to recruiting school. It's finally here. Our aim is really to explain the recruiting process to every athlete, every coach, every parent who is searching for those answers. So we've set up a really, really great panel of some of the best coaches, recruiters, evaluators, and people in college football.
From Power 5 to your local JUCO, we're here to tell you what recruiting is going to be like and what you could do to get the most out of the process. I'm your co-host, Marco Regalato. A little bit about myself. Um, I was a high school coach in the state of Texas for 6 to 7 years, predominantly in South Texas, with my last stint being in Fort Worth. Then I got the wonderful opportunity to go be a recruiting assistant at Washington State University. I was there for almost 2 years. When it was all said and done, when I left, had the title of director of recruiting, and right now, as of 3 weeks ago, I'm the director of player personnel at Rice University.
Yeah, absolutely. Congrats about that, Coach.
Appreciate you.
My name is Tony Calgene. I'm the defensive coordinator at Whittier College. I've stops at the high school level, NAI, Division III, FBS. So I've seen it from a lot of different angles. But we're really excited to bring you guys this all-star panel. So get right into the intros here. So our first coach, Mike Famagletti. All right, Coach Fam. He's the special teams coordinator and wide receivers coach. Just announced at Minute State. He was the former recruiting coordinator at Northern State, which is Division II, and Kansas Wesleyan, which is NAIA. Coach Ford was unable to make it this week, but we do look forward to having him on a future episode. And then we have Patty Ohanian. She's the director of on-campus recruiting at Maryland. Previously, the director of on-campus recruiting at Wyoming, ops and recruiting coordinator at Gardner Webb FCS, and then also the DFO at Division III, Christopher Newport.
Continuing on with the introductions, we got Mike Pomfret joining us as well. He's currently the linebackers coach and run game coordinator at Allan Hancock Junior College. Before that, he was a state championship coach at the semi-pro junior college and the Texas high school level, former GA at the University of Texas, and a U.S. Army Iraq veteran. We also got Mason Robinson joining us. He's currently the director of recruiting at Austin Peay. Before that, had some time as a recruiting intern at USC, as well as the assistant D-line coach and social media coordinator at Whittier College. And last but not least, we got Mr. J.R. Sandlin, the director of player personnel and recruiting at the University of Oklahoma. And prior to that, he was a tight ends and recruiting coordinator at Jacksonville State.
Absolutely. So, we want to dive right into the questions. I know you guys are here to find out about the recruiting process. And part about, finding that process is the timeline, because every school is going to be different. Every level is going to be different. So my first question is for you, Coach Sandlin. Describe the timeline for your typical recruit. When can student athletes expect to start the process with you? When do things get real? And when do you expect it to conclude?
Well, Tony and Marco, I really appreciate y'all putting on this together. I think this would be a huge help for anyone trying to gain more insight on the recruiting process and to get educated, because I just don't think there's enough resources out there that can help families and recruits alike. But to the question, I think once you start playing high school football, once you start initiating having some film, that's when people are going to really start taking interest in truly evaluating that film. So I think from a timeline spot, once you start playing and you have some film, I would tell you right away during the season to start making highlights of those cut-ups. If it's a 2-game cut-up, a 3-game cut-up. I mean, recruiting offices across the country are making cut-ups on game film, a 3-game highlight, a 6-game highlight, a 9-game final season. So you would want to be making those cut-ups right away once you start playing some high school varsity football. And I want to make sure I clarify that varsity football, because that's a competition coaches will be evaluating. And once you start with that film. And once you have that film, that's when you want to be sending it out. And I always recommend sending it out. I've always said a 5 hour radius because that's really driving distance. And you can look wherever you're at on the United States and you can just put a pin and then put a circle around 5 hours. There's plenty of websites that allow you to do that. And then send it to every school that offers football. The moment you start playing, send it out to every school that offers football in that 5 hour radius. Maybe it's a 7 hour radius if you need more schools than that, but should probably give you anywhere between 40 and 50 schools that offer college football, every division. And I look at it like fishing. You need to throw the bait out there so you can get a bite. The more bait you throw out there, the better the bite. But if you just keep sending it to one school and expecting that one school to look at it, you probably do a better job with your time and resources sending it to everywhere. Because I've seen kids a lot of times send their film to maybe it's a Division 3, and then a Division 2 sees that they've been offered. Then, when I was at JSU and we saw like, why does this kid have 3 or 4 or 5 Division 2 offers right here in this central location? We need to take a look at them. And then you wanted to go ahead and send an offer there because, you're dealing with partial money at some of those places. But from a timeline, once you start playing varsity football, I think that's when you start making you start making a film and getting that film out there to as many places as you can. And really that starts the process for you. And then as you see people show interest and as you get coaches' attentions, sure, there's going to be probably a lot of camp invites early, that freshman, sophomore year. But as you get along the process, that junior, senior year, you're going to have a lot more communication. You're going to be in communication with a lot of programs that have a vested interest in you, and those are probably the schools you want to be locking into. But I think to start the process, the moment you start having varsity film, that's when you need to get it out there. As I mentioned, send it out to a 5 hour radius first and foremost, and then build off of that momentum, and then continue to send it. If you send it to 50 schools, send it again to the 50 schools, because you got to keep in mind, a lot of times the timing of when you're sending it is really important. For example, if it's the fall, I would highly recommend sending it on a Friday. That is a travel day for most college football programs. And they're on buses, they're on planes, they're sitting by their phone. And that's when they can get to a lot more of the messages. In the springtime, I would tell you definitely think about their spring schedule. And don't send it on the days they have spring ball. Send it on the days they don't have spring ball. But I mean, it's also a little bit of a science when you're trying to get that information out there, because at the end of the day, you're having to market yourself and push that information. And I would just continue to tell everyone, just continue to push that information as much as you can and send it out, because if you won't market you, who will?
Yeah, absolutely, Coach. That's great stuff. I love the send it on Friday. That's some Jedi mind trick stuff right there. But moving on, Coach Robinson, what about your program and what you guys look for? What's kind of your timeline?
Yeah, I think that was a great kind of in-depth answer from across the board, but to kind of narrow it down from an FCS perspective. And also, thanks again, of course, y'all for putting this on. It's a cool event you got. But from an FCS perspective, you got to think about time. You got to think about resources, and also just how we do things with partial scholarships at the end of the day. For us, unless you really pop right in front of our face as a freshman or sophomore at camp, or we cross paths with you at practice or something, it's going to be hard for us to jump on those kids super early. So you'll see a pretty limited amount of FCS offers hitting kids at that age, just because you kind of need to see that development. Really for us, it's going to be that junior fall. We want to see you, obviously making a contribution to your varsity team as a junior that fall, essentially. Someone that's already kind of showing those leadership abilities, and we'll recruit you all that junior year, essentially going to that spring, because to be a winning FCS program, we got to go against the big dogs at the end of the day. We gotta recruit against the Power Fives, the G5s, if we want to be playing competitive football and be one of the better teams in FCS football. So we're going to cast a net. I wouldn't say wide net, but a large net of players that are all really quality players. We're like we said, we're going against G5, P5, because we know what we can offer, and we know that we can be competitive down the road, and we'll fight that fight through that spring, and hope to see those guys at camp and lock down hopefully a couple commitments throughout that summer going into senior year. And then obviously as things kick off in the fall, we're watching you in person at games, seeing how you've developed. You get a lot of junior kids that might have it, but you need to see a couple of inches in growth or pounds gained or a little faster. So we'll have our senior eval guys kind of on the back burner that can definitely pop off, and we'll go all the way up to a signing day in February, because you never know if a kid gets dropped by a bigger school and we're in love with him. And maybe they haven't seen campus just yet because they've taken a lot of visits and been super involved in the whole camp circuit. And really that winter of your senior year is a good chance. You're going to be doing your OVs with FCS programs. You'll be weighing a lot of those options financially, just by the way we package things and how other programs package things. And it'll really go down all the way to February. And then walk-ons can be all the way through that spring. We're just trying to find sleepers out there of guys that can make it work and kind of have that fit both ways at the end of the day.
Awesome. Great stuff. So kind of transitioning now, Coach Pomfret, talk to us a little bit about the junior college level.
Yeah, so the junior college approach, and again, Mark Anthony, thanks for doing this. This is great. What we do, it handles a little bit different. So right now, myself, and I assume most junior college coaches in the country, we're looking at 23s. We're looking into players going into their senior year of high school, where I know before, they mentioned, hey, junior year, you should really be hearing from us in regards to visits, offers. That's not what we're here for. That's not the population we serve. So if you are tuning in as a parent, student, athlete, coach, and you're someone who's about to be a senior and you don't have offers, you might want to begin thinking JUCO football, because that is what we're here for. During the season, we're into contact with players. We don't have any blackout periods, so we'll build our board. It's really limited contact, but we do want to see your tape, like the coaches were saying, assembling them, sending them in. And then in the spring is when we really turn it up. At that point, we start reaching out to our board, obviously top-down mentality while we're doing that, seeing what other opportunities they have, what's available for them, and just building, again, that relationship with that player, right? Something I can't stress enough for the student athletes on here is, we're all real people. We're all human beings. So let's communicate like human beings and have conversations. And it doesn't have to be, ball this, offer that, every time we talk. Coaches do want to get to know their players, and I think that'll help you in the recruiting process if they have some sort of affinity too. I know it certainly does with me. The big step that we'll get to in the spring, and yeah, this is a huge step for us. We don't move forward without it, is talking to your high school head coach. We will talk to him, and their recommendation is important as far as your caliber, not only of a player, but most of all, who you are as a young man. Are you going to fit in with our culture? If you're looking to move to the other side of the country, that is something that it's in the best interest for everyone to make sure it's a good fit. So we don't take any further steps until we talk to your high school head coach. And then also your family, whether that's grandma, grandpa, mom, and or dad, whoever is really a champion for you in your corner. I know for myself personally, I'm going to want to Zoom or FaceTime just kind of with the house, right? Like when you come to play for us, who are you going to be leaving behind? Who's going to be missing you? And I just want to get to know them where we can all see each other face to face before we move forward with any sort of offers or commitments. Now, being that JUCO doesn't have scholarships, we offer a roster spot. And once we do that, it's really on the player to determine his timeline for a commitment. And, with limited housing and everything available, as it is at every level, not just JUCO, what we really get to learn a lot about these recruits then, because the quicker they can get in a school application, first thing I tell them to do, hey, we want you to come play ball for us. Head coach checked out, family checked out, you check out, go ahead, put the school app in. How long does that take them to do? That shows right there how high it is on your priorities. Follow that up with the FAFSA app with our school code in, getting that information in and finished. And the quicker they're able to accomplish that and the better they are at communicating it, the more serious we are then about them as far as getting them that commitment and locking them in to bring us into our program.
Awesome. Good stuff. I do want to follow up, who should be looking at the junior college route? What are some of the perks and what are some of the disadvantages?
Yeah, it's, JUCO football has been a lot of different things over the years. What I would say is any student athlete who does not have a full ride offer should think about JUCO. Doesn't mean you should have to go JUCO, but you should certainly think about it. We've had some guys that have been partials at NAIAs, D2s. They end up transferring to us because they find it more affordable, at $5,000 a year in state, 7.5 out of it. I mean, the Pell Grant right now is at what, $6,900. So, that's most of your tuition. Players that are slept on, right? Like we've, obviously coaches are always looking for them, but guys who maybe you played wide receiver in a single wing team, and that throws the ball once a game and it's on a boot pass. Well, you don't have a lot of opportunities there to showcase your skill set. So, if you feel you're a D1 caliber wide receiver, a guy like this actually comes to mind who I've recruited before. But no one's giving you or offering you that kind of money. Bet on yourself and go JUCO for a year or two and then finesse that into the full ride and the big time level of competition, you feel you're ready for after developing with us. The other, more kind of traditional, I think what JUCO is typically pigeonholed for is non-qualifiers. Any student athlete on here, if you finish high school with less than a 2.5 GPA, you cannot go play NCAA football. At least not last time I checked. So there's the NAI out there, and then there's JUCO. Being that's community college level, our acceptance rate is higher than even any NAI programs. That really is what JUCO's here for. I take pride in that, being myself someone who, I have a master's degree from a prestigious institution now, but I didn't have an opportunity to go to any college after high school because, I had bad grades my freshman year and didn't really take care of business like I should have between the ages of 16 and 18. So we're able to bring you in here and teach you those study skills you need and the academic prowess that you need so you then can leave. And once earning your AA, if you're a non-qualifier in high school, once earning an AA with myself at Allan Hancock or any other JUCO in the country, you can then transfer out, as opposed to the people that were qualifiers who I said might have been slept on or just got preferred walk-on offers or partial offers. They can leave at any moment, which, I mean, I guess to me, that brings me to the disadvantage, right, of JUCO football is the turnover, not just for, players, right, where they're only here for a year or two, but you got to think about your teammates as well. Every year, every junior college football program loses half of their team because they graduate out. When you're playing at a community college level with freshmen and sophomores, there's a high rate of turnover. And with that, development can be very difficult. So when young men do make the JUCO decision, they really need to have a, I don't want to say 4-year mentality, but, like twice that, right? Because it's all got to happen in half the time. You got to get on that horse and ride real quick because you only get 10 games a season and chances are you're only going to get 2 seasons.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Patty, what about you guys over there at Maryland?
Yeah, I think I can, first of all, thank you for having me on here. I'm really excited about this, but I definitely think I can echo a lot of the things that everybody else has said so far. So don't want to be too repetitive, but I think that, as soon as you're in high school, the key really is being your own advocate. If you're not going to stand up for yourself and put yourself out there, nobody else will. Like Coach Sandlin said, consistency is key. I think that goes for pretty much all levels in college football. I've been at the Division III, FCS, Group of 5, and now I'm blessed to be at the Power 5 level. And I think that that's kind of been the same thing across the board. But I don't want to be too repetitive. I think everything else everybody else said was pretty much spot on.
Awesome. So I do want to follow up. There are a lot of personnel people, recruiting directors, recruiting strategy. When recruits are kind of looking for people to contact at a program, what exactly does a director of on-campus recruiting do?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I have a lot of people ask me that on a daily basis, actually. The exciting thing about this role is that it's new. In the grand scheme of college football, it's a relatively new role, and I feel like it changes on a daily, if not yearly basis. I feel that directors of on-campus recruiting are kind of the glue that meshes the recruiting department, the scouting department, the compliance department, the ops department. It kind of puts all these different facets of a football office together kind of in a pretty little package that we hand to a recruit. I think communication is a key spot for us. I know it's a very important and valuable skill, whether that be digital communication, written communication, phone communication. I also have been blessed to be around some really good evaluators and scouts at the different schools and levels that I've been at. And I've been able to learn from them and pick things up from them. And I actually, have the ability to watch people on my own and make my own assessments of them now and hand those off to whether that be the coaches or the scouting departments at, the respective schools that I'm at as well. Obviously, the overarching responsibility that a lot of people see kind of whether that be online or when you come to a college is, of course, official visits, unofficial visits, game day visits, but there's so much more that goes into that. Like you mentioned, the strategy behind an individual recruit. I mean, it's really an all-encompassing role and no day is the same. And to me, that's what makes it really exciting.
That's awesome. Coach Pham, tell us a little bit about the recruiting timeline and a little bit about just NAIA in general.
Hey, thank you very much, Coach. I really appreciate you all having me on here. NAIA is a little bit a unique beast. There's a couple of things that make it different than NCAA. Now, I would say for the best comparison or the best thing that people can relate it to, it's really like a combination of the D2 and D3 model, where, hey, we understand most athletes are not going to go professional out of this. Now, we have had NFL scouts come through our programs that I've been at the NAIA level. But for the most part, we really embrace, hey, we're going to improve you as a human being first and foremost, and then we're going to, hey, have that translate to on the field success and everything. So with the NAIA, they're 4-year programs. You do not have to be an NCAA qualifier. Right now, they actually removed the test part of it. You only need a 2.0 cumulative high school GPA, and you would go through the NAIA Eligibility Center would be there. And then the unique thing about NAIA is we are not held to the National Signing Day dates. So for NAIA football, say you got an offer, you can sign that LOI that school sends you first day of your senior year, or you could even sign it maybe even the last day of your senior year, right? The recruiting timeline for NAIA, just similar to D2 and D3, is more focused on this upcoming current class. So NAIAs are focusing right now on the 2023 class. They'll probably have most of that wrapped up that December, January, February, and then a few of them will keep going on and on all the way through May. It's very friendly to the transfers of the world, just like D2, a little different and slightly easier qualifications that you need to have as a student athlete. But overall, it's a very good experience that a lot of student athletes can have.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Coach. So next up, next question we have, we're going to go right back to you, Coach Sandlin. What can players do to get noticed by your program?
Let me touch on one thing real quick with like timeline in general for especially some of the Power Fives that are out there that you see a lot of kids that have offers, right, and good offers, and haven't necessarily committed to some of those programs. I think you got to keep in mind for everyone, the board is constantly evolving. The board is constantly changing, and I would always recommend now with how recruiting has gotten so advanced, and also with the portal, once we go through a new season and once the season starts, and I think this is for everyone across the board, new needs will be established. So if I was a 2023 kid with offers and really feel good about some of my situations and I haven't committed, it might be something to consider, because you don't want to be on the outside looking in as new needs are established through the season, and you can get those immediate needs through some of those forms of the portal now. So I mean, I just want to put that out there as a cursor, as something just to think about as well, because the recruiting board is constantly revolving. New needs are constantly being established, and as that board shifts, as people commit, not commit, you identify a new person. You just don't want to be in a situation. I had a kid when I was in Oxford High School. He was a sophomore. This was 09. He got every offer that he wanted. Like, he got them all. And this was before the portal. But he thought he was just going to hold out and try to collect offers. Well, he didn't get to go to Clemson. He ended up going to a good school. He went to Ole Miss. But I'm like, you tried to play the game when the game ended up playing you. And I would just recommend, with all the things that are happening now, just take that for what it's worth. And just, I know so many times, like, I'm just going to wait. Well, there's not a lot of waiting. There's not a lot of waiting now. But to that question, Tony, on, what can some of the players do to get noticed by your program? I think first and foremost, as I mentioned, it's going to start a lot of times with the film. I mean, we're not going to really watch anyone without having a film. And I think it's really important for everyone. How you put your clips together is essential. How you put those clips together, it is marketing. You have to show your best. You got to keep in mind, a lot of people are watching a lot of film. And I want to say, in my time at Alabama, we probably evaluated per class 1,000, 1,200 something kids per class. It's probably gone up since then now. But I mean, you're talking about having, and that's not just watching that kid one time. That might be multiple times you watch that same kid, but we're talking about it collectively anywhere between 1,200, 1,500 kids, whatever it is, per class, to kind of give you an idea. But you want to make sure that those clips right away are just wow factor clips. For example, if you're a linebacker, right, I think it's important that you don't just, let me use a running back example, because it's a lot easier and the listeners will understand it. So many times you see a running back put sweep right, sweep left, sweep right, sweep left, touchdown, 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 touchdown. That's great. We saw that you can get on the edge and run to the end zone. But what are all the attributes the running back actually has to have? Well, we never saw you block. We never saw you run in between the tackles. We never saw you catch the ball. We never saw you pass protect. We never watched you make someone miss an open space. There's a lot more factors that go involved in making your film than just putting a couple of wow factors like that. I mean, you got to really think about I think the best thing to do when making the film is understanding that, who is my audience and what is my film for? Is it for entertainment, or is it to get a scholarship offer? Well, I hope if you're making this for a scholarship offer and you're putting it and piecing it together for the eyes of the evaluator. So, for example, let's just use a linebacker. If I was a linebacker and I'm piecing that film together, I probably need to see your very best open field tackle, your very best shed a block, make a tackle, your very best pass breakup or interception, your very best blitz, your very best tackle for loss or sack. I mean, there's 5 clips right there that if you put those things right away, your very best ones, what is the evaluator going to do? Oh, he can do this. Oh, he can do this. Oh, he can do this. What you have to do is eliminate all the questions on your play. And I think that's one of the things that recruits have to do a really good job of doing, is putting that film together in such a way it's for the eyes of the evaluator. I think you got to keep in mind, who is the audience and what is this film for? And the film is clearly to be evaluated and try to be identified and to be watched. But I think also keep in mind some of the things you got to answer to on the front end of watching that film. And this, again, I think the film is the essential piece, because no one's going to look at an academic transcript or do a character evaluation or do all those things unless the film is worth the evaluation. because there's steps into the process. And the film is obviously the very first thing. And going back to that point earlier, I mean, all the guys watching so much film and all this, they might watch 5-8 clips. I mean, I don't think you spend a whole lot of time watching a couple, because you got to keep in mind, people argue that all the time, like, well, you should watch all of it. Let's be real here. A lot of people don't have a lot of time to watch all of it. Secondly, the first impression is a lasting impression. So what you show up on film right away is what people are going to think. I mean, I said that's just human nature. When you meet someone for the first time, you have a really quick second where you know that you like it or dislike or like this individual. But also keep in mind when putting some of that stuff filmed together, I think these 5 little areas will really help you when putting the clips together. Is, keep in mind they're going to look at size and growth development. I like to put that together because obviously you got to have a certain size for each position, but you're also looking at growth development, because all depends on when you were identified as a player that they started evaluating. If we identified you as a 9th grader, we know you're going to look totally different as an 11th grader, right? If we identified you as a 10th grader, you're going to look different as a 12th grader. So I always like to put that size and growth development, knowing that they're going to be looking at that. Secondly, just your overall athletic ability. That's how smooth, how fluid. What's your change of direction like? What's your balance and body control? And that's kind of all across the board for each position. Thirdly, physical. Either you're going to be physical or you're not. I kind of look at it as either you're going to throw the punch or you're going to take the punch. Fourthly is your toughness, and a lot of that is your mental toughness. But overall, I think a lot of the toughness you can see on film is situational football, 3rd and short, 3rd and long, on the line, goal line situations, things like that. I mean, I think people got to realize people are looking at these details because the details matter. And then lastly, you got to watch some of the game film and watch some of the clips too. When watching the film, to see how you play, your energy, effort, and motor. I think a lot of people need to understand that the highlight film that you make is just the teaser. It's just the trailer. You should want us to watch the game film, because what people are spending thousands and on scholarship money everywhere across the board. So a lot of people are going to go back and watch game film on you, because game film shows who you really are throughout the course of a game, through adversity as well. So I think a lot of times, how are you going to get noticed is clearly on that film. It's going to be on those highlights and how you piece together that film, but also you want to put it together in such a way you want them to watch the game film on you. And then secondly, I think you got to have some workout film. I think workout film is not necessarily your squats and your bench and power cleans. I think it's more so your athletic drill work, where you're showing burst and acceleration and explosion. A lot of that film does help because it's a good supplement, because a lot of times, let's just say you'd love to see how this individual can backpedal, open up his hips and drive through and things like that. You can put film together like that. And I know I've had plenty of discussions with prospects alike, just putting a supplement film together as a like I said, as a workout film together as a good supplement film to send as well, because that can help. Now, is it going to be the ultimate say so for evaluation film? Absolutely not. But does it help? Absolutely. But once you have that film, I think it's important you realize the film is the identifying piece, and then it goes into the evaluation piece. And that evaluation consists of a film evaluation. It consists of an academic evaluation. It consists as a character evaluation. It also consists of a personality evaluation. A lot of times when you finally get on campus and you meet the staff, because the kid needs to always realize you're always being evaluated. Every day is an evaluation day, because every day is a work day. And this is a profession. And you got to keep in mind, every day when you enter the professional world, every day is an interview. Every day is an evaluation day. We're all looking for a competitive edge. And you can help make it or break it just how those evaluations are. Because you can tell a lot about an individual based off a transcript, especially if you see a lot of consistent grades are not well in 9th grade. I mean, there's a consistent habit right there, and you got to ask the question. Maybe there was something that happened. So there's a lot of questions. But I think, again, your film is going to get you noticed, and you have to do a really good job putting the plays together in such a way the evaluator needs to watch it for your position. I think that's key. And I always will recommend that first clip, the very first clip, or whatever you choose to put on it, better prove that you are a football player, because that's what you're coming to play. You're coming to play the sport football. So that very first clip better answer the question. Man, this guy's a football player. I will say this. There's a clip, there's a video I watched. Obviously, can't mention names, recruits, but there was a recruit that was a quarterback. He started his clip with a play running over a defender. I mean, like, hey, this is awesome. This old buddy just trucked this guy. He's a quarterback where you're expecting him to throw the deep ball for a touchdown or something. I'm like, do we have any questions on toughness? Like, let's go to war. So you end up getting excited about watching that clip. But that kind of also proves the point. I think that very first clip needs to show that you are a football player and answer the question, is he a football player? And with the film, that's going to be your supporting evidence that you do that. Another thing that I think I've seen kids do a really good job of, putting all that information together, especially when you're sending it out. There's a kid not too long ago I saw put together a Google Drive, and it literally just put everything in the Google Drive. And obviously it's free to make. They just put all their links to the film, workout film, uploaded their transcript, uploaded their I even uploaded a recommendation letter from a teacher. I was like, wow, you're really thinking outside the box. But just different things like that can really help the recruiting process when you're presenting all the information a program might need. So if it's your film, if it's supplement workout, if it's your academic transcript and recommendations all together in one, I mean, that does a really good job putting it all together, helping those programs, and definitely getting you noticed. More importantly, it shows the individual you're sending to it that you got your stuff together, because there's not a lot of questions that the recruiting departments have to ask, especially if you got your NCAA numbers and all that kind of stuff in there as well. So I know I said a lot to try to answer that question, but I feel like the information can really help the recruits. It doesn't matter whatever level it is as a whole. You got anything to follow up on that?
No, that's great stuff, Coach Allan. I think you're 100% right, especially at the levels that we're at, is when you're watching film, you're almost trying to find reasons not to offer a kid,
Right.
And then, just kind of speaking on, you touched on, marketing a kid earlier. That's kind of like, what can you do to get noticed? Social media is a great tool. I've I've had kids reach out on LinkedIn,
That's
try
pretty
to get in,
impressive.
try to get in through there, and they're all means necessary to get noticed. And I think persistence is a big key. Just because our DMs do get flooded, and you can find yourself, you're as a student athlete, your stuff can get put towards the bottom. You got to be persistent, because every time you send a new message, you get to the top. And then find ways to kind of be creative, as well as one little tip or thing that I used to do when I was a high school coach was I'd have my athletes embed the video in their tweet. So not necessarily tweet out a huddle link, because
Right.
you still want to, but that's not the only thing you put out there, because you put out a huddle link. Not everybody has Huddle Recruit, especially depending on what level you're in. So you got to sit there through a minute long ad about not vaping. Whereas if you embed the video right in the tweet, it plays immediately. And sometimes, like you're saying, that first explosive play is enough to get you to stop scrolling on Twitter, be like, whoa, this
You
is
want them
interesting.
to stop, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah,
key. You want them
yeah.
to stop. And like you said, screen recording helps a lot of that too on Twitter
Mm-hmm.
now. You just screen record it and you throw it on there, and that helps tremendously.
No, definitely. And you want to be, strategic with who you're tagging, because there's a difference between persistence and spam. You don't want to be the kid who's spamming everybody. Be strategic with who you're tagging, what levels you're attacking. Don't try to tag 30 coaches in one tweet. You touched on film. Film is huge. Film is everything. But another way is, of course, getting on campus, going to some camps. Getting those coaches to evaluate you in person. Going through their drills, they get to coach you. They get their hands on you right there and there. Also, going to camps where you can make some noise at, like a UC Report camp or an Under Armour camp or Rivals 24/7 camp, because most schools, especially at the Power 5 level, I know we had it at Washington State. We're subscribed to most of these services. So if you go out there and we get video from the camp, we get all your verified numbers. That's a great way to get our attention as well. So I'll go ahead and move on to the next question. This one's for you, Patty. Is how does a player know he's being recruited by your program?
Yeah, I feel like that's such a tough question almost, because everyone's path is so different, and I want to emphasize that. I mean, some of the quote unquote best players we've recruited, at any of my previous schools or Maryland have come up last minute, and some of the longest, earliest recruiting processes ended up not working out. So I want to emphasize, I think everybody's path is extremely different, especially now with the transfer portal and everything like that. I also want to mention, it's not over till it's over. So signing day is a long ways from now. And even if you're on Twitter thinking, God, everybody is, committing or has a bunch of offers already and I don't, we're a long ways away. So don't get discouraged. I think those are my two things I wanted to start out with. But to be more specific, I think social media is a big clue, whether that's follows from staff, follows from coaches. I think a lot of staffs are getting more savvy with different types of social media. So it's not just Twitter anymore. It's TikTok, it's Instagram, it's, LinkedIn, like one of you mentioned before. But that's the follows, the retweets. We can't necessarily type back to you, but we can interact a good amount. Obviously, financial means differ between different families and student athletes, but making an effort to come to campus is huge, and that will reciprocate, at least in my opinion, whether that's camps, whether that's, visiting with your team, whether that's inquiring about a game day visit. I mean, I know I like to have a pretty open mentality when it comes to people coming to campus and kind of experiencing what, Maryland football has to offer. So I think that will definitely pay dividends. As far as us, back to you, coaches, recruiting office reaching out to you, when we're able to, once you're in that eligible time frame, getting graphics from us, getting letters from us, setting up phone calls. I've always been the person to kind of set up head coach phone calls, and assistant coaches are pretty good at doing it on their own, but kind of that consistent communication, I think, between the program and you is a pretty good sign that we're interested in you and we're interested in learning more about you. And that's not just what you do on the field, but that's also kind of who you are as a human being as well. And ultimately, it would end up with an invitation for an unofficial visit or an official visit, hopefully, or, an offer over the phone with a coach. And, everybody's process is so different, but I think consistent communication and effort from a recruiting department or a coaching staff is a really big sign that, we are interested in you and that, we kind of have you on our radar.
Awesome. Good stuff. So I do want to kind of change it a little bit. We're talking a lot about the recruits. So let's talk a little bit about the high school coaches and what can high school coaches do to help you guys recruit their players. So Coach Mike Pomfret, what can coaches do to help you guys?
Just listening to Sandlin and Marco there talk earlier, they brought up a lot of good points from when they were high school coaches as far as helping players organize their tape so it's complete. And, we don't see every run you've done for a first down, but yeah, in between the tackles, hitting the edge, are you willing in pass pro? So just, guiding through them that process as far as being a coach and knowing what coaches are going to want to look for in a player in their system. So many times players see highlight tapes as just that, right? And they put all their favorite plays on there, but helping them think like a coach is important for any high school coach to help his student athletes get recruited. All that being said, most of all, just be honest. You expect it from your players, and I think it's fair that anyone expects it from you. So, don't tell me he's 6'1" if he's 5'11". If I like him at 5'11", So lying about height and size, there's no place for that. Give us honest numbers when providing that. Don't round up. Don't, add 2 inches and 20 pounds. Don't tell me he's a good kid if he's not. Don't tell me he's a leader if he's not. Don't tell me he's committed to the weight room if he missed once a week. When you do have the opportunity to provide facts, I think any quantifiable facts are great to have. So obviously the transcript, we'd like to get that in as quickly as possible, especially in my situation. Like, okay, why are they not a qualifier? Okay, they had a bad freshman year. That's fair. They're 14 years old. Young men change a lot between 14 and 18. What are their grades recently? What are those looking like? That's what I'm really concerned about, not just as a coach, but the academic advisor at my institution. Verified track times. those are huge, right? I mean, I know every coach in the country, every coach listening, he's probably got 10 guys, on his offense that all run 4.5s or below. But providing those actual times where we can see, his 100, his 200, that goes a long way as far as us determining, what the speed will look like. And just the honesty. I mean, and the position I'm in too is the same as a lot of these high school coaches, where we don't just bring players in. Any player I'm talking to now or have had in the past few seasons I'm recruiting in, I do just as much on the back end to get them out, right? Where I'm now, serving that role as a high school coach, and I'm calling. So if I'm going to call Marco, or if I'm going to answer a call from Coach Sandlin, I tell my players all the time that, Coach Sandlin said it, when you're in the professional world, every day is an interview. I tell them all the time, the accumulation of your character here is who I'm going to be able to tell you your future coaches who you are, right? So I base my reputation on them, and I'm not going to call Marco about a guy or Patty or anyone else in here or anyone else I know across college football if I really can't put my reputation on him. Now, I've been lucky where most guys I am able to do that. They acclimate well, and we have a great working relationship. But I would say the same thing for high school coaches, because if you lie to me about his character or work ethic or, height, weight, well, chances are the next player you call me about or the next player I call you about, you're going to lie as well, or not be completely honest. On the flip side, if I call you about a recruit and you tell me straight up, hey, coach, he's probably not best for your program, whatever the reason may be, I'll appreciate that a lot more than being sold a lemon, So I think it's the biggest thing with coaches to get their players recruited as a whole, right? Not just that one individual player, but just be honest, build rapport and a level of professional respect with college coaches, where when you do have that dude, that one guy that can be a big difference maker, and for whatever reason he slept on or what have you, coaches will take your word seriously then. I think honesty is the most important thing for high school coaches.
Yeah, good stuff. Coach Fam, what about you? Do you have anything to add to that high school coaches can do?
Oh, I think Coach Palm's definitely very accurate on all that. I mean, I definitely agree. I think another piece of it, though, as the high school coaches, in a high school coach's job description, they teach life lessons, prepare people for life after they leave high school. But very rarely does it say, hey, you need to go get all your guys college offers or college scholarships or college spots. It's that can only help your program by building that. I know for my high school, that helped our high school having me go play college. I was a 5'9", 185-pound kid who went and played D1 football. How many high schools in the country have 5'9", 185-pound kids just really falling out the walls and overflowing the whole building? Pretty much all of them, So that really gave that motivation. It can extend and, give that legitimacy to your program. I think one other piece of it, though, is, hey, the recruiting process constantly keeps changing, but overall, it's still always going to be about relationships. And it's easier now than ever for players to get directly in contact with us college athletes or with us college coaches. I'm sorry, for our college coaches. And as the high school coaches, sometimes they can get a little left out of the loop. They might not know that their guy has talked to 20 different colleges and ruined his high school's reputation with them because he keeps tagging them. He's not that level, or so many other things could happen. But I think a high school head coach talking to his players, trying to educate them about the recruiting process, being involved, helping out in so many different ways can really go above and beyond and affect those young men's lives in a very positive way. I think another big thing is, hey, being honest with those young men in your program. If they're an underachiever or, hey, there's someone who they really want to play college football, encourage that, right? But if there's someone who, probably shouldn't, play college football, probably have that hard talk with them, that heart-to-heart talk with them and say, hey, unfortunately, hey, you're trying to target these D1 schools. You're probably a D3, D2 guy, or kid, you're not really playing for us. There's probably a opportunity for you outside the game of football, or if you want to be involved, step into a student assistant, go to the college level and help out that way. Having high school coaches being our allies is the biggest thing for us. I know there's high school coaches all over the country. If I get hit up by one of his kids, I'll let him know, or anything. But even for us college coaches, as coach said, and everyone said, we're going to go through your coach. We are always going to go through your coach, especially if we get serious. Now, our DMs all get blown up with about 1,000 new young men a day wanting to play college football because it's the greatest experience on earth. But we're going to let their coaches know, hey, they're a good fit. We're going to get them involved in the recruiting process. Or the other big thing is, hey, high school coaches, you can cut guys from your program or you don't play them. It's the same in our world. Like, hey, we don't badmouth us if we tell your guy, no, he's not good enough for us. Hey, we're just being honest with him and he'll be the right spot somewhere else. I also think, hey, high school coaches having great relationships with college coaches can get their guys offers. It's an incredible experience. I know my high school head coach got emails. That was my offer, $5,000 here, there. And then just creating relationships with coaches of all levels, because no matter, even if I've been at a D3 school and we had a kid from IMG on our roster, same thing all over. You never know, like, hey, what coach you need that relationship with to develop that guy and get that offer.
Awesome. Coach Sandlin, anything to add?
Yeah, I wrote a few things down that are probably that could be practical to use as well. In '09, I was at a high school. We had 3 sophomores that ended up picking up every offer, Under Armour All-Americans, all that kind of different stuff. But some of the things that I did to really help them was the same thing. The players that are standing out that are a little bit different, and the time frame a lot of times. Like if you're an earlier guy, like those guys, those were sophomore guys. I knew that they had 2 more years to play, and they're starting. I think letting some of these programs know that you do have a freshman starting or a sophomore starting, and knowing that they're going to have 3 years of varsity football or 4 years of varsity football, especially at some of the Power 5 levels, is going to be extremely helpful, because that's varsity film right away, and it's going to perk some interest. And what I did was I just sent those videos out and sent those informations out, and it's kind of like the recruit should be doing, being persistent in their pursuit to send out information. I remember going through, looking up everyone, the email addresses, and they're not necessarily on the websites. Like they're not on the athletic websites. You're going to have to go to the school website and go to the directory. I mean, I just gave a tidbit, so that's a big one. But to actually get some of those email addresses, because they're not all out on there. But I remember just constantly having to send that out. And this was before Twitter now. This was even before that. Like a lot of the guys said, it's a lot easier now just to send that information and tag the ones in it. But is also just sending those updates consistent. I think it's important, also having the film to back it. But now with all the technology we have, I would just do a Google Drive. Just have a Google Drive of here's your academic sheets of these kids. I had a poop sheet. It's just a big information sheet of all the kids. Hey, these are our seniors. These are our sophomores. These are our juniors, and I had all of those guys with their information. I think having the right information for them is going to be huge. But some practical things that you could do is make sure you have pictures of the kids by a door frame, where they showing the full body length in the door frame, or brick walls, because everyone knows how big those bricks are and can count up those bricks. I think that's really, really helpful. Also understanding, I think everyone, every year, twice a year, every semester, because you cannot make it important enough, is academic core education. Like we've talked about, some of those guys struggle their 9th and 10th grade years. And right now, you got to have 10 cores locked in before your senior year. And they aren't changing. You're not changing those core classes. So educating your team on academic core education twice a semester, because it's that important. Once every semester, because it's that important. And also, when people ask what's their GPA, I think you got to know their core GPA and also their current GPA, because there's 2 parts of this. Being at JSU the last 8 seasons, we dealt with a lot of partial scholarships, but also there's so much academic money available, not even with a test score anymore, just because you have a GPA. And there's so many programs that are out there, so many universities out there. If you have good academics, they're going to be able to help piece together a scholarship for you based off academic money. So I think those high school coaches really need to also know how to do the core GPA. That's going to be extremely helpful to them, and also being able to help protect a lot of their student athletes, because that's the key. I think protecting a lot of the student athletes is really helpful from academics. From having some academic troubles, if they can educate those individuals early, that's going to be great. But also being able to know some of those GPAs and seeing where some of the academic money can come from as well, to help build some scholarships from that perspective. But I hope that just providing some of those practicals, if it's photos, like I mentioned, or just updating constantly with the information that's happening, because that's what normally happens. A lot of high school coaches do a great job just sending constant updates on, hey, Johnny has a new max. Hey, he had this many yards in this game. Hey, he's running this in track, and just continuing to update you, because you're just as important as a part of the story as they are too, because they are your student athletes. And if you're in it to change lives, that's what it's about, trying to help each and every one of them have more success. And I think that's the greatest success we can give anyone, is just being a small piece of the help of their success story. And then I think the kids need to understand too, the recruits need to understand, if these coaches, these college coaches, are talking to your coaches, they're not asking if you can play football. There's no different than the NFL scouts. I've dealt with the scouts for the last 10 years. They're not asking if you can play football. They're watching it. They can see it with their own eyes. They're asking different questions, like, how does he show up on time? How is he in the weight room? How is he in the classroom? Does he come prepared? Let me see his notebook. Does he take notes? How much film does he study? How does he study? I think they got to understand there's a lot more questions that get asked. They're not asking about necessarily athletic play. They saw it with their own eyes. That's why they're there. Now they're trying to figure out the person and who they are, because at the end of the day, that's what you're dealing with as the coach. You're dealing with the person. And when you get upset with the player on your team, I think that's normally what you start. Man, he don't show up on time. Man, what is wrong with this guy? All those practicals. So I think those are some of the things they got to keep in mind. Those are the questions that get asked. I think recruits need to know those are the questions that get asked to their coaches, but also some of those practical things I mentioned beforehand, with academic core education, pictures of kids in front of the door frames or brick walls, information sheets, maybe a Google Drive, and just doing a great job of keeping those updates on those prospects consistent. That's what it is. It's just communication.
Absolutely. I love that. That's great stuff, man. We got some hungry high school coaches in the group, so I know they're soaking all that in. Next question, we'll go with you, Patty. What advice would you give athletes in recruiting?
Yeah, I'm actually really happy that, you asked this question, because I think it's so important, and I'm so happy Coach Sandlin brought up what he did, because it's so true. I think, first of all, you need to be relentless in the pursuit of what you want. You need to have a good relationship with your high school coaches and your advocates that surround you, whether that's trainers or family members or teachers or your principal or your athletic director, and have them advocate for you, and just be relentless with it. If you want to play college football, put your mind to it and see what happens. But if you do your part, I think a lot of people are really pleasantly surprised with the outcome. Take care of everything off the field. It only gets harder. I played Division III softball in college, and I loved every minute of it. But my experience as a student athlete was difficult. It doesn't matter what level you're at. It doesn't matter what school you're at. It doesn't matter what sport you're playing. Being a student athlete at the college level is very difficult, and getting your ducks in a row off the field in high school as a young man is going to pay off dividends when you get to college. And like Coach Sandlin said, we already know as a staff if you can play football or not. We can pull up your film, we can pull up your highlight, we can pull up your cut up, we can pull up your game film. What we're looking for is, what I'm looking for specifically is, are you going to treat me well? Are you going to treat my staff well? Are you going to be a constant issue with our academic team? Are you going to be a constant issue with our, facilities and maintenance people in our building? Are you going to be a good teammate? Those are the questions that we're trying to answer, and that specifically I try to answer when I build relationships with your high school coaches and your trainers and your family. I think the next most important thing for a recruit is to be authentic. Like, who are you? I want to know your personality. Like if you're a class clown, funny, fun loving guy, I want to see that from you, because I think that's awesome. And that's something that you can bring to the table and be a part of the team with. If you're more reserved, that's great too. I want to know that though, because I want to know who you really are. I don't want to know, the same jargon and recruiting slogan that you're giving to every other school, because I want to know what you're going to bring to Maryland football to elevate us on and off the field. And your personality is a big part of that. And that, that lends into being honest as well. We talked about coaches being honest, but I think it's important for kids to be honest too, because I would rather know the facts up front than you tell me one thing and then I do my digging and it doesn't really add up. So I think being authentic, being honest, being your own biggest advocate, having a good relationship with advocates around you that we will reach out to eventually at some point. I think that's a great start. Obviously we've talked a lot about creating your film, creating your cut-ups, creating your highlights, putting them out there, communicating with coaches. I think transcripts, we touched on that briefly, but having them ready and able to go and fire out to coaches is super important. There's nothing worse than being really interested in a kid, especially when it comes time for official visits. When it comes time for an official visit and you can't get a transcript on a kid, that bars him from coming on an official visit. So having those ready to go, having somebody in your, your academic office at your school that you can get those accurately updated and sent to you quickly is super important. And I would recommend just having a PDF of it on your phone that you could just send out. And even if there's something on there that you're not proud of, it's so much better to have it readily available and able to send than, it takes weeks and weeks and weeks to get it from you. Other than that, there's no doubt that playing college football is a really hard thing to do, but playing college athletics is probably arguably the most rewarding experience that you'll have in your life. And it's worth the hassle, being on podcasts like this, doing your research, following coaching staffs, following admin, following recruiting staffs on social media and seeing what they can share with you is so important, because there's a plethora of information out there for you to learn from. I know people, my own father, he played football at the U.S. Naval Academy, graduated in 1979. He went on to be a Navy pilot for like 20 years. And to this day, he says that playing college football was one of the most rewarding experiences in his life. So it's definitely worth it. Do the work from your end, like the things I just mentioned, and it will definitely pay off big time.
I love it. I wrote down relentless. You used that earlier, and I agree. Kids, you guys got to be relentless in your recruiting. Great. Awesome. Coach Pomfret, what you got for us in terms of what advice would you give athletes in recruiting?
Yeah, I'm 100% with Patty there as far as just being authentic, being a real human being, just someone that you can have a conversation with, build that relationship with. Yeah, having good relationships with those in your wheelhouse at the school and in the community. And then mentioning this too, and I mean, I can't stress this enough, especially from where I sit, but just having good time management skills and being organized. I mean, again, it came up earlier, you're in the professional word now. And so you got to act professional. You got to be ready and prepared and punctual. And that's not just a one-off thing. That's an everyday thing. I think the only other thing I'd add to it is, we're operating on this platform right now. So much of college football now runs through Twitter. I'm only on it because of the career. But that is keeping your Twitter and your social media clean. Like I said, I'm on here for football. If you're a student athlete looking to get recruited, I suggest the only content you are certain about posting should be football related. Anything else you like, you retweet, you tweet out, you need to think long and hard about it, because if you're on this platform trying to get recruited, we're going to scroll through your feed. If we're following you, your likes are going to, what you like will pop up on our feed. I've fallen off of recruits who I was following because there's then content popping up on my social media that I don't want to see just because they liked it. While you're using this platform, right? Coach Sandlin brought it up earlier, posting workouts and all that and drills. If you were doing that and it's against competition, I don't want to see you going against your younger brother. right? I want to see real competition if you're posting that. If you're at the gym, don't just take a photo and then drop the hashtag brick by brick, or built different hashtag no cap. No, like let me see you work out. If you're in the gym, prop your phone up or have someone else video you. Let me see what you're repping. Let me see the real weight you move. Because I mean, you can put whatever you want in the bio, but again, until we see it, it's not quantified. But yeah, just outside of that with social media, I think really everything Patty hit earlier and all the coaches throughout this, it's been spot on.
Love it. Built different. Coach Fam, what knowledge can you drop on these recruits? What advice do you have for them?
So I'm a big believer in life. Make your plan and then work your plan. So I think so many young men in the recruiting process, they don't know exactly what they want. They say, hey, I want to go to a school to go get my education and play football. Yeah, that's really like the point of college football and college athletics overall in general. Like, yeah, but what specifically do you want at school? So what I was told is, hey, pick the school you'd be happy at if football was no longer an option. We all can think of one of our best friends who we played with, hey, they either got hurt or coach cut them and they became a student assistant, a million different things, right? But hey, that guy's stuck around. You still probably loved hanging out with them. They might still be one of your best friends you call up, hang out with, anything, right? So pick the school that's right for you there. Now, how do we find the school that's right for you there? And, there's a couple different things that I did when I was getting recruited. I wrote down a list of 20 schools. These are schools I'm targeting. Didn't matter the level. I had D1s, D2s, D3s. I remember my top few schools. The school I ended up going to my freshman year wasn't even on like the top 15 there. Well, I don't even know I knew it existed as a school when I was really starting my recruiting as a sophomore. And then I ended up going through the recruiting process twice because I learned from that experience, like, hey, it's bigger than just football. So what are like the 20 things for you that you really love about the schools you're talking to or schools that you want to talk to? Is it, hey, it has to be 60,000 plus people in the stadium. It has to be a full ride. I can only go to a school in these 3 states because I'm in the witness protection program. Anything, right? Or, hey, I'm a biochemical engineering major and I have to study that because that's what I want to study. Well, that limits your number of schools, Like, that's exactly what it is. Like, for me, I was biochemistry. I had good grades. There was a lot of options, Hey, is academic money going to take is that going to be a big factor? Do I have to play in my freshman year? Chances are if a team's playing a lot of freshmen, they're not going to be very good, right? Because an 18-year-old has only had their 18 years of development under mom's eating, or food where, hey, that food that she's been making has only gotten you to whatever height you are. It hasn't filled you out now that you've done growing, right? So there's so many things that this need to keep getting better at and take that step forward in. And that's where, hey, make your plan, come up with a list of things you want in a school. Because, hey, say a school is your number one, but when you finally visit there, as Coach was saying, hey, visits go a long way. But what if you realize after visiting that school, you hate it, right? You'd rather find out now during your junior or senior year rather than your freshman year of college when you're already there as a student.
100%. Guys, I hope everybody's taking notes. This is some great stuff. All right. Next up, we got Coach Robinson. What advice would you give athletes in recruiting?
Definitely want to kind of work off Patty's point about just being prepared for everything off the field, especially transcripts, having those on hand and all that, because I think at the end of the day, you're going to see a lot of staffs across America. They're becoming more and more saturated with scouts and personnel people and people that can sift through so much high school football in the course of a year. And they don't really leave any stone unturned, I think, this day and age, just given the size of these staffs and their ability to watch film. So at the end of the day, you can do all the little recruiting tricks and, try to work the system and all that. But the film is going to speak for itself and your grades are going to speak for itself. You could send 100 DMs to every coach in your state a week, but is that time better used? Hitting the books so you have that A in that class at the end of the semester, or being a good teammate, or being a supportive figure for your family. So when the call does come and the time does arrive, they're in a place to help take you to that campus or that unofficial visit. Because, there's a lot of kids out there that, rightfully so, say they're slept on or underrated, and that's all good. But at the end of the day, people are going to find your film. It's really our jobs to find your film. And when we send that DM or that call or we come up to you after camp, you got to be ready to go. The grades got to check out. You got to have questions on hand, to show us that it isn't necessarily your first rodeo and you have priorities and intentions, like Coach Pam just said about, setting a kind of a list of wants and things that are important to you. It's easy to get mixed up with the hundreds of kids that are just trying to find a chance to play ball, but I want to see someone that has intentions off the field, intentions to be, leaders in the community and leaders on this team, because I know that's the kid that when I bring on campus in a few months, I'm going to have that much more of a genuine connection with and someone that I feel good about getting on the phone with or talking or texting down the road, because, he's more than just a recruit. He's a person that's putting college and putting academics first. And, that's what gets you through those 4 years and keeps you committed to the program and kind of what you started.
Awesome. Good stuff. So wrapping up here with our last question of the day, kind of talked a little bit about, mass tagging coaches and kind of the spam. And, it's definitely something that will probably get you muted rather than get you watched. So what are some of the other things that need to stop or need to change in recruiting, Coach Pam?
Well, one of my things that is my favorite thing in recruiting that I've seen, and I really just want to be a big trend is, high school coaches or JC coaches don't just advertise for your guys. Like, hey, if there's a guy, who's a ball player in that league, advertise for him. Tell coaches about him a little bit. Like, hey, if a coach comes into your building, be like, hey, there's a guy over at Laney that we saw and came against us. Man, he was a dog. Have you stopped over there to see him? Stuff like that. I mean, I know recruiting in the Arizona and like Chicago area, there's a million high schools, out there, and all these coaches see each other. They coach against each other all year. The other big things, one of them's on our side of the profession, coaches, like negative recruiting. I've seen text messages from like recruits like, guys, advertise for your program. I can't control anything that goes on at any rival's program. So why would I even talk about it, right? I can only talk about and control what's going on in the program I represent, and I'm very proud to represent. And hey, sell kids on what you got going great rather than trying to say, hey, this program doesn't have good things going on. You don't want to go there. They suck. They lose. Whatever. That doesn't help your credibility with the young man, and it doesn't help his credibility in the profession if he's going to buy into that, right? If he loves that school and you're just bad mouthing that, what is that saying to him about you and just overall what you think, right? And I think a big thing that needs to change, young men, people who want to get recruited, involve your parents in the decision, right? Get them involved early, right? So many of you are dependent on what your parents want. Hey, if you're talking to schools 18 states away and it's a 5-hour flight or a 30-hour car ride or whatever, make sure your parents are on board with that. Mom doesn't want to find out, hey, honey, you just signed to a school all the way across the country. I didn't even know you were talking to them. Or, hey, that's way out of our price range. Or, hey, there's a lot of different things because, once you get dropped off on moving day, you're as much our responsibility. And we don't want to be hearing from parents that, hey, we made the mistake. We can't afford this school, so we got to back out. That doesn't help our school. It doesn't help you as a young man, because then you're going to have credits that you didn't pass, or you can't afford your bill to actually go transfer to another school. A lot of problems can happen there. So again, keep it positive in the recruiting. Avoid those. Advertise, because all the young men just need as much help as possible to stand out. And then involve your parents, involve your support systems, your coaches, your family. Get them involved in your recruiting because they care about you and they want to help you.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think especially the parents in the decision, or even just giving them the heads up, because everyone wants the full ride, everyone wants to run out of the big tunnel, but that's not a reality for 95% of the players going through the recruiting process. You're probably going to have to pay something to go and play and get your education. So get your parents in that decision process, have an idea of how much they can afford. All right, Coach Robinson, what do you think?
Yeah, obviously, just Twitter and recruiting is crazy these days, and you're seeing all sorts of graphics, and it's a great time to be in the business of making recruiting graphics, I guess. But you see so much emphasis on the offer and the kids counting up their offers and the kind of the clout chasing, for a better word, and that's really more the result of how we've done it as far as how recruiting has evolved over these years, but. I think if you're a kid that is a borderline FCS player, you're trying to hopefully get that first D1 offer, or even find a great home, D3, D2, NAI, JUCO, you name it. Um, Finding a fit for you, and we talk a lot about that. And obviously you can list off all the rankings and academics and all that stuff, and you might not know if you want to be a neuroscience major or a physicist or whatever, but having a general idea of, hey, I'm interested in a school that has some department in media, and where I can work in possibly production, or having a city nearby that has some sort of internship opportunities, and being realistic. How far do you want to be from your family? How far do you want to be in a different type of culture and environment? Because I think you're serving yourself better at the end of the day, directing your resources to schools that are actually going to be a fit for you, whether that's staying in state, or a certain driving radius, or only looking at schools that have, these types of programs and all that, especially if you're a high academic kid. Save your resources and time and energy and kind of, mental health at the end of the day, and don't waste your energy trying to be wanted at a place that, isn't really going to be a fit for you down the road. And I think from a staff perspective, we working in football, everyone points fingers at the transfer portal and retention rates and all that. But I think we got to look at ourselves and really be honest about, how are we pitching our school? What values are we talking about? What offerings are we talking about? Because it's really our job to make sure that kid succeeds here over 4 or 5+ years, and being genuine about the programs we have and the resources they have, or maybe won't have at our given school, because it's really our job to be genuine and really evaluate, are we really selling that family value and family connection and culture? Are we really giving them the academic support from a coach's perspective to a support staff perspective that we claim? Because kids are smart. They're gonna have families and a support system, hopefully, that's gonna help them make that educated decision. And we can blame it on kids not wanting the competition and leaving and blah blah blah. But you got to be honest about what your roster is, what you're looking for, the types of kids you're looking for, and what it means to succeed at your institution. Because that process and that fit goes both ways at the end of the day. And you got to do that kid justice, because you're the adult in the room, and what that type of kid succeeds at your school, and it's your job, I think, to help them on that path, whether it's there or not there.
Love it. Well, folks, that's a wrap. It's a solid almost hour and a half of information. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to all our guests. Make sure you give them a follow, and tune in next week to Recruiting School. Appreciate y'all.